Thank you so much, Mr. Sage, for those words, and Moana as well for laying that benchmark with the sixth report, creating just, as you pointed out, just an incredible baseline which we can look back on to go forward with, and bringing us up to speed with where things are at. Now, I'm conscious of time, and I'm conscious that we have a fantastic lineup of panel experts and ocean lovers, so I'll quickly bring them up to the stage, and we will roll through to the next part of the evening. The first panelist is known to us because she got to go up here and deliver the State of the Golf report. Moana, I'd like to invite you back to the stage, please. Involved with the Hauraki Golf Forum since 2010, our second panelist here, who was probably the most excited around the news that the shipping was being slowed down for the Bryde's whales, because she is a cetacean expert, associate professor from the School of Biological Sciences and Institute of Marine Science. Please welcome Rochelle Constantine to the stage. And you'll already be familiar with our next panelist because she was one half of that incredible video that we watched at the start. Her proud dad, Steve, is somewhere in the audience. And Riley, if you haven't seen what she's done with Young Ocean Explorers, she's fantastic. She's pretty much written off our generation, and she's going into schools and just starting with the next generation and getting their heads around what we need to be doing to looking after this place. I cannot believe that you're 19 now, Riley. You're growing up so fast. Please welcome to the stage, Riley Hathaway. I spoke of mussels before, and I did so with a little bit of nervous trepidation because there is an actual mussel expert here in the room as well, a professor of marine science from the University of Auckland, Andrew Jeffs. Thank you, Andrew. And she was so eager to be involved that she turned up early, left her shoes here, left and then came back again. I'm not quite sure what that's about, but I know that she's very enthusiastic about being here. Representing Auckland Council, Pippa Coombe, who is the Deputy Chair of the Environment and Climate Change Committee. She's a member of the local government's New Zealand's National Council and is the new co-chair of the Hauraki Golf Forum. Pippa Coombe. Welcome. We'll warm the panelists up with a generic question that they can all take a turn answering. I'll throw two questions into the same pile, and we can go down there to get to know you a little better. So panelists, I'm going to ask each of you, what is the one thing that you love most about the Hauraki Golf? And what is the one thing that we can all do to help restore the health of the golf for future generations? What do you love most about the golf? What's the one thing that we can do to help? I mean, someone can volunteer to go first. I know that none of you are short of words. Let's start then. Well, Pippa, can you kick things off?
I'm happy to start.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
The thing I like most is the smell. And just that smell when you're on the coast and you smell that sort of kelpy, salty smell. It just gets to me. I don't know what it is, but it smells great. So yeah, that's what I like. What can we do to help the golf? Well, I think that's a really important question. I think everyone in this room can do something to help the golf, whether it's writing to the minister to ask her to do more, or just when you go outside picking up a piece of plastic wrapper that could wash into the sea and become something that a fish eats, or if you're a builder, just making sure when you break your ground that you prepare the ground properly so that you're not getting dirt washing out into the Gulf. So everyone can do something, and I think we've got to recognise that and promote that as much as we can.
Fantastic. What a wonderful start, Andrew. Riley, would you like to go next?
Yes. What do I love most about the golf? That is a very tricky question. I just love that every time I'm out in the water, there's something different to see, and it's always a different experience. And it's pretty cool just to be able to say that I grew up going out there my whole life, and the amount of stories, I love the golf. Anyway, what can we all do? I was going to say the same thing. I think every single person can do their little bit, and I love talking to kids about that no matter what it is that you can do, that is enough. And if we all do a little bit, then a lot can change. So in terms of making a difference, just picking up rubbish or making sure that there's no rubbish on your streets so that you know that there's no rubbish from your area going into the water in your area. So
Lovely. Perfect. Rochelle.
The thing I love about the Gulf is how much life comes back here, no matter what we throw at it. So many animals come here and then leave here and come back here year after year, and they teach their offspring how to do it either deliberately, with the case of cetaceans, or just through their genes. They return home. This is their home, no matter how badly humans treat it. And that's something very powerful for me because I study big things. So, you know, whenever I go out there, I'm like, you're back. Wow. I love that. And what can we all do? I think we need to get better at having courageous conversations. I think we need to stop standing in the corners and yelling at each other. And I think we need to come to the middle, and we all need to compromise. We've heard about the Brooders Whales and Shipstrike. That's exactly what we did. The whole purpose of that when we brought that group together was what is our purpose? No one wants dead whales. That was it. It was no longer about any of us or who we stood for or our company or money or anything. And the kaupapa was we had to be courageous and comfortable with disagreement. And only because of that, in 2.5 years, we got a solution to what was one of New Zealand's largest conservation challenges. And for me, that's what we need to do now for the Gulf. Not in a month or a year or the next report. I'm sick of reading these reports that just go down, down, down. The only fully good piece of news was the Brooders whales are no longer dying. So courageous conversations, it's time to do that. You know, shake it off, stay away from the corners, come into the middle, be brave.
Excellent. Moana?
Kia ora. What I love about the Hauraki Gulf, Tikapa Moana, Te Moana Nui a Toi, is that I put my feet in the water that my father did, and his father did, and his father, and so on, back, back, back. So many generations that I feel that I'm a part of that. That's in my heart, that's in my veins. And what we can do more is very much what Rochelle says, work together and be the voice of the moana, because together we can make a difference.
Nice.
Kia ora koutou. What I love about the Gulf is that we're all so connected to it, and it's so accessible from so many points and vantage points all around the Gulf. And in terms of what we can do for the Hauraki Gulf, I have to say this as Deputy Chair of the Environment and Climate Change Committee, but if we acted as if there is a climate emergency, every action that we would take would benefit the Hauraki Gulf. So that's what I'd like to see us all taking action with urgency. Kia ora.
Okay. So actually, Pippa, I think we'll stay with you, and that brings up a good point. If we ask you to speak on behalf of Auckland Council, what are they doing for the Gulf?
Thank you for that, Pātai. There are so many people here from Auckland Council, and I do want to acknowledge my colleagues, the elected representatives, and all the people on Auckland Council who are working hard for the Hauraki Gulf. There is a huge amount going on, especially around monitoring, around restoration, pest control, and being part of contributing to the forum and providing a lot of resources for the forum. I know there's a lot of people on council who really want to do a lot more as well, and I had one of my colleagues sitting behind me saying hear, hear to everything that the Minister was saying. So just things like around development, planning, getting it right so that we don't have all this contamination going into the Hauraki Gulf. That's a huge role for council, and there's I think a big commitment, but a recognition that there's a huge amount more that we need to do. Kia ora.
Excellent. I'll keep going down the line, Andrew, and there's a lot of talk about what we can do in the science field to help the Gulf, but there's some really basic stuff where we can let some of the animals help the Gulf, and in particular what we could allow for the mussels to do if we could get them to replenish.
The mussels is a really interesting one. For those of you who don't know, the Hauraki Gulf used to have a massive mussel bed, nearly 1,000 square kilometres, which is nearly the size of metropolitan Auckland, was carpeting the Hauraki Gulf. And they're really important in terms of ecological processes, particularly for providing nursery areas for juvenile fishes. So a mussel bed typically has 10 times more juvenile fishes than areas without mussel beds. So getting those mussel beds were fished out last century, and they haven't returned. So a major challenge, and one that the forum has adopted, is trying to put those beds back so that we can get all those ecological benefits and restore those fisheries benefits that mussel beds provide for us.
Yeah, and just to speak to, I guess, to a positive story, the Revive Our Golf campaign, which are actually out there doing it, and they're in fact they're working in with commercial interests to take some of the green-lip mussels that are unused and reseeding them into new beds.
Yeah, absolutely. The aquaculture industry has been really supportive. Philanthropists have been really supportive in terms of taking mussels from mussel farms and working with scientists to figure out how we can put those mussel beds back and recreate some of those huge ecological benefits that they provide for the Hauraki Gulf. And I'm really optimistic that we're going to figure out how to make it happen on that kind of scale. That's the big challenge, is getting it up to 1,000 square kilometres.
Yeah, which would be magnificent. Excellent. Rochelle, let's speak to the science of things now. I mean, are we ready for events like climate change? We had parts of the west coast of the South Island last year that were 6.4 degrees Celsius above average, and that's, I mean, any temperature shift like that in the ocean is massive to the life that's underneath it. Are we ready for climate change happening out here in the Gulf?
No. I think we're in quite a lot of denial about climate change. When you talk to people about, oh, what an amazing summer, it was so warm and we swam and swam, and it was an amazing summer, and we did swim and swim, and the past 2 summers where we've had the warm blob, it's the technical term for it, and the El Nino, which the big El Nino was at 2015-16. So what that meant is it got too warm for a lot of our plankton. We did a study, the Plankton to Poo project. I wanted to know what Bryde's whales were eating, and so we collected their poo. But actually, it was really a plankton study. And we found, using high throughput gene sequencing technologies, these new fancy techs, that we have over 2,000 different types of zooplankton in the Gulf. There's more than that, but we identified over 2,000. Almost all of them have no name. We don't know what they are. That we know that they're roughly a wormy thing or a crunchy thing or a slimy thing.
Scientific terms.
Yeah, scientific terms.
Good.
But really, I mean, even in science terms, we have no idea what they are other than their phylum,
Right.
which is really poor resolution. But what we do know is that in the outer Gulf, mid-Gulf and inner Gulf, so Firth of Thames, Tiritiri Matangi and out by Jellicoe Channel, Hauturu Way, we have very different cohorts. And then by season, there are different cohorts. What we know in those warm years, it's too warm for a lot of those plankton and they move out even further. And why do I know that? Because the whales move out, because the whales eat zooplankton. And so the Whale Watch people, AWODs, who have been hugely supportive of our research over the years, they've now got 19 years of data, and we recently analysed all of that data with temperature anomalies, which account for climate change, so variations around what we would normally expect. And the Bryde's whales and common dolphins are moving further out of the Gulf in those warm years already. Most of you don't know that, and you don't see that, because you're not out there. But those of you who pay attention even to your coastal life know that it's too warm. The mussels are too warm this summer, and we talked about baking mussels. And those stressors are huge. So whilst our seabirds are protected on the islands, they have to, on warm years, they have to fly further to get their food. And there's a recent study, which has been really great, my colleague of mine, Brendan Dunphy's leading, and looking at little blue penguins. Little blue penguins live on the edge of life anyway. They are visual hunters. We all know them and love them. When we have big sediment runoff, which comes with big rains, which are coming more and more frequently with climate change, they can't see to hunt their prey. So they have to go further. If they have to go further, they're stressed and they can't find enough food. If they can't find enough food, they either can't make it back home, or if they make it back home, they're not in condition either to lay an egg or to feed their chick. They die and or their chick dies. And this is happening right now, right here. So, you know, not only do our islands protect the seabirds, but if the food has moved too far for them to go, it doesn't matter how nice their home is, there's no kai, or the kai is too far for them. So that's happening right here, right now. And we need to kind of get our heads around that. Yeah, we really do.
Riley, you, as the youngest panellist here, I mean, this is grim listening to hear some of this. I mean, what's the feedback that you get when you go into classrooms and you talk to young kids? Are they taking this sort of thing on board?
Yeah, yeah, that is horrible to hear. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's quite tricky. It's quite a tricky space to hold when you're going into primary schools, because there's obviously stuff like that going on, but for kids, we're bombarded with messages of the world ending and the world changing like that, and all these creatures. Yeah, it's a lot to take in, and I think at times it's too much. And so going into classrooms, I'm very careful with what I'm telling kids. And most of my stories are hope stories, and I love that, because I think we need that, especially as young people. We need good stories and things that make you want to go in the water, and things that make you want to go protect and fall in love with these beautiful creatures and beautiful places. But yeah, I do touch on things like that. Like one time in my talk, I showed this picture of all this plastic that was found in the stomach of a turtle. And before I tell them what it is, I ask them, what do you think it is? And a lot of the times they're like, oh, seaweed, or yeah, seaweed. And so I'm like, yeah, it looks like seaweed, but it's not. And they find out that it's plastic, and after one talk, I had a 5-year-old come up to me, and she just gave me a hug, and then she just started crying. She was like, I don't want the animals to die. And I was like, me neither. Like, I want to cry now too. It was horrible. So it's really hard, because you can't tell them everything, because they're just going to get so overwhelmed they don't want to do anything. And I've definitely felt like that too. And so, yeah, the response is kids nowadays, they care. They know what's going on, and they want to make a difference. You know, it's, yeah, the response we get back is insane. So I've got to be careful with everything I say.
That fine balance.
Yeah.
Retain a little bit of hope in them.
If I may, Clark.
Yes.
So, you know, kids are really, really resilient, and I've had the absolute pleasure to meet the young people at Long Bay Primary School, and they put a submission forward in June last year called Tangaroa and Taniwha. And so, you know, they're open to receiving this information, and they're the best conduits. You want anything done, get a bunch of kids to do it, because they're so passionate. They really don't care what other people are going to come back and say to them, because they're going to go gung-ho anyway. And they've got their own little TV channel, and they are really committed to making a difference in their little communities. They're pushing for an extension of the Okura Marine Reserve. And, you know, these are really, really young people that are out there doing a whole bunch of really, really great stuff. So they're resilient.
Yes. I mean, as we know, kids were the ones that helped parents flip over to recycling and to stop smoking. And if you can permeate and do what you're doing, Riley, and help that come through households, then that is fantastic work. Look, I am conscious of time, so we are going to start opening the floor up to questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand and we will bring a microphone to you. Also, Slido is up and in action, and people are sending questions through the slido.com. What was the hashtag? HGMP, there it is, up on the board. And as soon as I get the PIN number in here, it says incorrect PIN. How can that be? I'm too excited. I put too many zeros. Right. And so actually we'll stay with you, Moana, or if anyone wants to jump in and answer this question. This is from Mark Bellingham. Has the customary knowledge of the tangata whenua been cast aside for short-term science? Should Matarangi Māori lead the recovery of the Gulf?
Oh, I'm sure you'll get varying responses to that. And there are some, I think, tangata whenua that are working better with other agencies than other tangata whenua, but it really is about progressing that and taking the good stories and learning from those as we go forward with other kaupapa.
Yeah, and I think the example of popping a rahui up in the Coromandel is a great collaborative example of things working well together. I'll run through another question here. This one's from Kat Davies. There's been a lot of talk about how the Gulf is degraded. How do we get action for restoration of the Hauraki Gulf? That's a pretty big, broad question. Just do it. I think as was marine protection. It's a big, broad question. I think we covered it off before. Suzanne writes, what would it take to have more marine reserves like the one at Lee and the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park?
I think one of the real challenges we have in New Zealand is that marine protected areas are the most strict definition of it, and that is the great strength in it. You go overseas and say marine protected area, and you tell them what we have in New Zealand, they're like, oh my, because there are very few places that have this, and we need those. So the recent challenges have been put out for, 30% by 2030. As Minister Sage said, we have 0.3% of the waters of the Hauraki Gulf protected, and that is shameful. It is shameful. And so I think the thing is that not all protection needs to be fully no-take marine protected areas. Those are needed. They are actually critical, and there's lots of discussion and science and work around that's shown the benefit of those. But we also need other types, rahui, mataitai, taiapiri. These are all models that exist within our system that are incredibly valuable and flexible, and they also fit in with that, the approach that tangata whenua have around, governance, protection, management, kaitiaki of our oceans. And so I think we need to have more broad conversations about it instead of it just being fully no-take MPAs. And
yes.
That's the only way we can start to move forward.
And I guess marine protected areas are an easy thing to think of. Oh, great, we protected this area. But the problem is that fish and the life within do not understand the boundaries. And by simply putting in a marine protected area, you don't change the fishing pressure at all. You just move it out. The crayfish in the Lee Marine Reserve are a perfect example of that. It's been marine reserve for close to 40 years now, and the crayfish numbers have all plummeted there because crayfish don't keep still. They like to wander. In fact, they like to go out and hunt shellfish at night. And so they end up getting caught. And so we can lull ourselves into a false sense of security with what we think of as a marine, this is great, we put this marine reserve in, but until we find a way to reduce the fishing pressure to let things bounce back as a whole, then that's how, I believe that we can see a real difference. It's what you want to get some...
I'd really love to see a shift around waste. I think, we put all these rules in place, but we waste so much food, and I think there needs to be some more control around how much catch there is and then how much wastage there is.
I have a question here that might be directed at you, Pippa. Accessing the Hauraki Gulf beyond mainland beaches is expensive, writes Vaughan. How do we provide easier access to places like Turi, Rangitoto, etc. for people who don't have the finances?
That's a brilliant partai. I don't know if I have an easy question to that one, but answer to that one. But it would be awesome if we could be able to subsidise more ferries, where it's kind of they're now costed more as a tourist destination than they're not commuter routes. So it's very hard for Auckland Council to come up with subsidies, but there must be ways that we can partner with agencies that want to get more people out into the Hauraki Gulf. So that one, I would love to hear ideas about what we could do as a council to be able to make the Hauraki Gulf more accessible. I know just in little ways, there's things like when I was on the local board, we were just being asked to put in more accessible ramps into the Gulf, so it was easier to get smaller boats into the water, and that was just something that could be done and funded locally as well.
Yeah, there's plenty of boaties that would argue that there's still not enough ramps
Yeah.
doing the rounds. Yeah, you're right, and also I guess through connecting people to the ocean, that's when they really start to care about what it is under the water, so it makes everyone's life a little bit easier.
And I should just acknowledge that there are lots of groups that are already taking students out into the Gulf and getting people out there who are doing a lot of that work and getting volunteers out there. So I think it is probably a partnership approach that we can work on.
Do we have any questions from the floor? Just I've been staring at the screen. We do. And do we have a microphone there, sir, or do we have a big loud voice? There we go. Here comes one.
Hello, is this turned on? Kia ora, I'm Ian Burrows, I'm chair of the Hauraki Gulf Conservation Trust. Waiheke was omitted from Sea Change initially. It was left to the community to come up with a plan. Apparently Waiheke was a bit too feisty to get incorporated. This is now happening through the Waiheke Collective in partnership with Mana Whenua under the Waiheke Marine Project. We're running a future search event on the first weekend in May and then report to the MAC. We want Waiheke and Auckland fisher folk to put up their hands to participate and have a voice. How best do we do this? Because they seem incredibly reluctant to come forward and have their say. Maybe that's one for you, Clark.
I don't know if that is one for me, to be completely honest. I mean, Pippa or Moana, can you talk more to the process of that?
What was your actual question?
The question is, how do we get fisher folk to come and join in a discussion about protecting the waters around Waiheke? Because they need to have a say.
Invitation first. But in speaking to some of the people involved in that project, they seem very enthused and excited about the number of people that they have already engaged, and I'm sure that they will leave the doors open to anybody else that's willing to participate. The Outdoor Boating Club have been really, really amazing at being available and engaging in conversations out there in the Hauraki Gulf. I think it's really about just making sure that the doors stay open and that the communication channels are always open for everybody to be involved. Does that answer your question?
Right. It would be more interesting to know more about, I guess, the proposals in place as to what you want to do and the goals that you're hoping to achieve out there. Right. Fantastic. Thank you. We have another question just down here.
I read that the seawall in the harbour was being lifted a whole metre in order to cope with sea level rise, and this is utterly inadequate. I'm a scientist, I read reports, and everything is starting to accelerate. Every time I read a report, it says this is happening so much faster than we had expected. So we're going to see big sea level rises. We need to do things like, how are we going to protect Britomart against sea level rise? I love the electric trains, they're absolutely fantastic. Are we going to develop Whenuapai as an alternative airport as Auckland International Airport disappears under the waves? Because its runway's only a metre above King High Tide. So it really is a climate change emergency, and there are big questions that needed to be asked.
We'll leave that, yeah, Pippa, you're happy to leave that just as a comment and a valid comment that it is. And yeah, and I particularly enjoy reading some of the historical records of how far inshore the coastal waters used to be, you know, down at the bottom of Franklin Road where the estuary used to be, and they had issues of typhoid when black market sacks of oysters were hidden in basements that used to flood through Queen Street before that reclamation took place. And so if it was taken that way, you're right, it could easily come back the other way. Is there anyone else that would like to add anything or add further comment to anything that we've spoken about so far? I'm padding time here because my fat fingers are struggling with the screen that keeps locking. And we've got some more questions from the audience. Fantastic. There's a question just here.
Kia ora tātou, and thank you for all the work that's been put into this. I love the video. I guess for me, as like a member of the public, I'm thinking, you know, we recycle our plastic bags, we pick up rubbish as fast as we can do anything. Auckland Council is approving a consent for a marina on Waiheke. Ports of Auckland are trying to get through a dredging consent. What can we do? What can Auckland Council do to actually support the things that we as people want for the Gulf? And how can we affect that change through the Hauraki Gulf Forum and your work as councillors on the Environment Committee?
Thank you, Sharon, for that question. As the new chair of the co-chair of the Hauraki Gulf Forum, we've had a very historic moment on the forum, and in that we're moving ahead with co-chairs. And so we're a brand new forum coming together. I'd like to acknowledge the former members and the new forum representatives. So we're only just coming together now and moving ahead. But one thing I just want to mention is that we had an induction and we were introduced to the Act, the Hauraki Golf Park Act, by Graham Campbell, who's here tonight, who wrote it. And he said to us that we must think of a forum as a verb and not as a noun, because we should be a doing forum. We should be doing the work, doing the engagement, doing the advocacy and getting things done. And I think that we all came together with a very common focus that that is the way we need to go forward. So I did just want to thank Graham for sort of sowing that seed. And he also said that we actually have a lot more powers in the Act that we're not using, and that his big bit of advice was that we should know our Act and know our powers. So I know that's not directly answering your question, but I did just want to use that question just to be able to give a bit of a signal about where I think the forum is going to be going, and that we're very, very committed, I think, as we come together. We're going to have an announcement soon about who will be both of the co-chairs going forward and what we are going to be focused on. But I know it's going to be about actually, it's going to be about the forum as a verb and being very proactive. So watch this space.
Is that your way of saying the teeth will go into the mouth of the shark? Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent.
Hope, Moana, you feel that as well.
We've probably got time for maybe just a couple more questions, and then we will wrap things up. There's a question here I'll just sort of summarise, and maybe we could just run down the panel and talk to it. So many people are working in the Gulf. With it being so big, things get missed. What single problem should we fix that isn't being done already? What do you think is the most pressing issue, something that sort of raises a flag, I guess, in your mind? Moana, you're looking away. Rochelle, you're looking confident, so I'll start with you if you like.
I was trying to decide which one to pick.
Yeah.
I pick fishing. Anyone who extracts anything. Yeah, it's that simple. It's not commercial versus recreational. It's not fin fish versus shellfish. It's fishing. We all need to just tai hoa and just, you know, take a bit less. Think about what you're doing. Think about what you're taking. That is, I think, one of the single biggest threats.
Moana, it's right there. You can push play on the what's the thing?
I think really it is around education and encouraging people to have a relationship with the ocean and with the environment, so that they feel connected from the heart and from the head, and so that they've got something at stake. We often say, you know, look, if we think of the ocean, Te Whānau Tangaroa, as Minister Sage spoke, he is the child of Ranginui and Papa Tuanuku, and if we were to look after our own children, or we want people to look after our children as we will take care of Ranginui and Papa Tuanuku's children, we have to have a relationship so that there is something at stake.
Fantastic, thank you. Riley? You could do anything
I was-
tomorrow. What would you do?
Oh, I was gonna say, just getting the word out there. It's kind of similar, but yeah, getting the word out there. Like, it's the 20th anniversary. It's been 20 years, and a vast majority of Aucklanders don't even know exactly where the Hauraki Golf and Marine Park is. And we want to change that, but also it's just, I don't know, especially for kids, educating kids so that they can take these stories home to their parents and create change through that way. Because, as my dad likes to say, you know, you always listen to your kids, even if you change to stop them from nagging. You know, you just targeting kids like that, and I don't know, educating anyone in that way. But I think, yeah, what we're doing with kids is going to change a lot as well. Just getting the word out there and making people aware and a connection. That's what.
Fantastic, thank you. Andrew?
I'm with Rochelle on the fisheries front. I think, you know, one of the points that the report highlights is that rock lobsters are functionally extinct in Hauraki Gulf. You know, we talk about the quota management system being a world-leading system. The two things don't match up to me at all. So there's something fundamentally wrong, and we need to sort that out and put it right. And the Hauraki Gulf is a good place to do it. There's a lot of goodwill there, and yes, there's some interest groups there, but they've been hurt by having a population crash. People have lost their livelihoods, their families are hurting because of their lost income. Recreational fishers aren't enjoying their experience. But worst of all, we're seeing kelp forests being devastated by kina population explosion, and that's creating a whole new legacy, and I just don't want to be seeing my kids trying to work out how to put kelp forests back in the same way that I'm trying to work out how to put the mussel beds back.
And Pippa?
I attended this afternoon the media stand up with the minister and two of the authors of the report, and it was, I mean, it really is very, very dire what is in here in a lot of ways. And one thing that the Shane said was that really hit home to me is that he said that a lot of the negative changes that have happened in the Gulf are irreversible. I mean, and that is just really tragic. But he did say, and I'm a politician, so I'm, can't do a quick one-word answer on this one, but he did say that we can decide the future and we've got to act quickly. And that's just absolutely what it's all about, that we absolutely have to act. And what the report, one of the key messages in the report is that we've put on the ledger of development versus the environment, we have been putting too much weight on development and extraction and pollution. Now is the time to focus on the environment and on the Hauraki Gulf and its health.
Thank you, Pippa. And with that comment, I think that you're going to be a wonderful co-chair of the Hauraki Forum. I look forward to the years ahead. Wonderful baseline that has been established, Moana, through those 6 reports to help us sort of ascertain a better picture of what's going on. Rochelle, thank you so much for speaking so passionately and with detail, which is what I like and respect, as to things that are going on, because it's, you were the one out there with your sleeves rolled up that actually gets down and counts all the curly squiggly things that as of yet have no name. Fascinating. And of course, Riley, if you haven't seen Riley and what she's done with young explorers, it's just such a wonderful resource. They've put out a great book, and the work that they do going into schools is so important into the future. It's nice to have you back in New Zealand and doing that. Thank you, Andrew, for enlightening us as to, and just framing so well the, it's that ripple effect, it's that totality. If you knock something out, what is the downstream effect of what happens in our ocean, taking out the crayfish, having the kinnibarren explode, losing our kelp forest, what hides in the kelp forest, what eats them, the whole ecology of things can collapse and tip over so easily. And thank you, Pippa, for being here, for representing Auckland Council and having that sort of sense of optimism and teeth in the bite of the shark to try and attempt to do the difficult task of tackling some of these jobs. And as we sort of look forward and say, let's see you back here in 20 years and see how we've got on and see what we can reverse. And hopefully it's more than just the wonderful plight of the Brooders whales, which are resident here in the Gulf. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite you to thank our panellists here this evening.